full circle completion. The industry had a major milestone last year. I think it's August 2023 when stablecoin volume surpassed payment giants, Visa, MasterCard, and all of them. So with us, we have a panel. I think I'll ask them to introduce themselves, starting with Dr. Markus on that end, and then coming this way.
Cool, thank you. So first of all, amazing that you're here. We're really happy that we can be here and talk to all of you. These chairs are really comfortable, so we get cozy and comfortable here. My name is Markus. I'm working on Mento. Mento is a stablecoin platform on Celo. And Mento hosts or is a platform for different stablecoins, different currencies. It has a dollar stablecoin, the Celo dollar, a euro stablecoin, also now a West African franc. And we have a big focus on Africa. It's open and permissionless, so we want to work together with many builders that want to deploy their solutions on top of Mento. And I've been working for the past 6 years, around 6 years, on Celo, layer 1 blockchain that probably will be introduced even more. It's an amazing blockchain for stablecoin transactions because you can do fast, cheap, and very secure transactions. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dr. Markus.
I'm Tosin, Onikosi, and I'm Web3 Product Marketing Manager at Opera. Opera is a browser company, but also not too recently, we've also started to build Web3 products, one of which is Pay, which is a dollar stablecoin wallet, which is integrated inside of Opera Mini, which is one of a very popular browser here on the continent. Pay, we launched last September. We're currently live in Nigeria, Ghana, and Kenya. And we're ecstatic to see the growth that it has had so far and see how excited people are about the product. Personally, background is in kind of fintech, but I've also kind of been helping to roll out Web3 products on the continent. I did spend some time at Bundle Africa, which is a child product of Binance. Helping roll out, whether it's new features, but also campaigns locally on the continent.
Thank you.
Hi all, thank you for being here. It's really great to be on this panel because it feels like I'm chatting with friends. Yeah, so quick introduction. I'm Isha Varshney. I head ecosystem strategy at Celo Foundation.
I think they can't hear Isha. Could we increase?
Is this better?
Volume on that one?
Yeah? Okay, great. Hi, everyone. I'm Isha. I had ecosystem strategy. Thank you, Tosin. I had ecosystem strategy at Celo Foundation. I maybe quickly introduce Celo to those that are not very familiar. Celo is a layer 1 blockchain. What makes us super special and unique, in my opinion, is that we're very mission-oriented, and our mission is prosperity for all. That traditionally makes us focus on areas such as financial inclusion, community, and climate across Web3, which is kind of rare in Web3. What makes, I think, the chain, again, I think a little bit different and unique is we have a couple of things as part of the base technology of the chain, which enabled us to focus on emerging markets, such as we have something called Social Connect, which allows you to have a wallet. And I know Pay kind of holds this, which allows you to have a wallet with just your phone number. Think of it like a Web3 wallet, like your M-Pesa wallet, to be honest. And so you don't have scary wallet addresses, or private keys, public keys. The other thing that makes it super unique is that we have extremely low gas fees, which is like sub-cent. And because of all of these things, our focus has always been to kind of onboard the next billion on chain. And I think that's exactly what we're going to talk about in this panel. But as part of Celo, I think my privilege is that I get to work with incredible projects and builders in the ecosystem that are in Web3 and sometimes in Web2, kind of exploring Web3. Folks that are on this panel, such as Tosin from Opera Pay, as well as Markus from Mento with the incredible stablecoin. But there's like a ton of people in the audience too that are building on the Celo ecosystem, and I'm happy to talk about that a little bit more. But excited to be here.
Thank you. Yeah, so if you look at users on the continent compared to users elsewhere in the world, I would say that any crypto users, any Web3 users on the continent tend to be pragmatic. So we have quite a number of use cases that you could look at around the world, whether it's store value use cases, remittance use cases, or at least for the West, it's all about price, right? So what are the challenges you feel that Web3 can address for local users? Maybe we can start with either Tosin or Isha. What are these challenges that we face on the continent that you feel very strongly Web3 can address?
That's a very good question. So just like you said, remittance is a very important use case that Web3 can address. There's a lot of money that's flowing into the continent from the US, from Europe, from the UK every year, right? And that number continues to grow year on year. And I think the main barrier to doing that, or the main problem that people face, or people who are sending money back home face, is first off the fees, and also generally the availability of easy way to do these things, right? And I think that's something that blockchain solves very easily, which is allowing you to send money across countries, allowing you to send money from wherever you are at cheap prices, just like Isha mentioned.
Yeah.
When you're sending on Celo, it's sub-cent fees. So imagine sending large amounts of money and you only have to pay a fraction of a cent to do that. That's not something that people are currently able to do with the solutions that exist. So remittance is one use case, but also just generally access to financial tools.
Yeah.
Right. And on the continent, one major problem that exists is inclusivity, right? Two financial products are not that inclusive, and there's a lot of people locked out. You see, dare I say that a lot of fintech products that have popped up in the last decade on the continent, you hear things like, banking the unbanked. And that only exists on the continent, right? This unbanked section of people only exists on the continent because there's millions of people who are basically locked out of, payment methods or locked out of financial products just because whether it's, the device that they're using or their location or just one thing or the other that doesn't allow them to use these methods of payments or use this financial tools. And I think Web3 is able to solve for that in a very easy, in a very accessible way, which is the solution that we're looking for.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tosin, for that. And I'm going to just generally add a little bit to that. For Africa specifically, remittance is really big. And I know this because, born and raised here in Kenya, really great to be back home. But, sending money back home to Kenya or from Kenya used to cost me personally 20%. That is unsustainable for, the average user. And remittance in and out of this continent is 100 billion per year, which is not a small quantum from any global financial perspective, right? So there's clearly remittance as a use case, but also on top of that, if you are getting remittance from the West onto the continent, you're also losing money when the money comes to the currencies because you move from a dollar or a euro to whatever African currency, right? And we've had deflationary currencies across the board. Zimbabwe, Sudan, Ghana, Nigeria, right? And so it's not only just remittance, but what do you do once you receive the money? Because you lose 20, 30%?
Yeah.
In a week or 2 weeks or a month. And so what Web3 allows for you is hey, we will allow for you to transact that money from the West to the continent at sub-cent fee, but we'll also let you save it and keep that money in a dollar denominator or euro denominator, whatever denomination that you want to keep it at, so you don't lose value. So the remittance piece, I think, is a no-brainer for the continent, but I want to talk further, right? I did talk about holding money in dollar or euro denomination. It's also saving money, getting access to yield. And for instance, US Treasury right now is 6%, right? If you can hold money in dollar and get access to yield in US Treasury, I think that's a great use case for crypto and for Web3 for everyday users. I don't like to say unbanked because I think a lot of I don't think that's a great term. I'd love to use the word underbanked, and building financial rails for the underbanked is great, right? So you have savings, you also have micro lending, which is a really big use case because there's so much economic growth possible on the continent. And for that, you definitely need capital. And capital sources on the continent, as we know, exist, but volume of capital clearly is a lot larger in the West, and that capital is actually looking for great returns, and returns on the continent are spectacular. It's just access to these returns become really difficult in a traditional financial system, and so Web3 helps you bridge that gap, right? If I can provide you access to micro lending on the continent where you're making more than 7% in the US, which is your treasury rate, that's great investment for me and for any other retail user as well as institutional LPs, right?
Yeah.
So I think like lending is great, savings, like I mentioned, is great. And then also I think there's like another use case that I think is excellent for this is like X to earn, right? Anything to earn. Think of like micro work, right? You could do any kind of small tasks like adding maybe a newspaper article or anything, right? And you get to earn quite a bit of money across the world. And because of the world today, it's super global. Web3 allows you to get payment for that kind of micro work on the continent in hopefully a dollar or euro denominated currency. So I think there's like lots of really interesting use cases that like, yeah, would be really special for here.
Yeah, and before I pass it on to Dr. Markus, I think what we're looking at is, to Tosin's point, major savings on remittance. So the cost of remittance is something that people like to talk about a lot. The solution is already here. And you use stablecoins today on any of these chains. It's really cheap and it's really fast. You look at currency devaluation on the continent. Like if you're just holding USDT, as I'm sure many in this room were since last year, or any other stablecoin for that matter, USDC. On the Kenya shilling alone, you have gained 20-30% in the last year, right? So that like inflation hedge use case is really strong in Africa. And this has spilled over, at least from where we stand in Kotani Pay, even into businesses, right? So businesses are not able to, because we have two problems. We have currency devaluation, and then we have also dollar scarcity. So businesses are not able to get USD from banks, and so they need to run their businesses, and they need to think outside the box, and many of them are moving more towards USD stable coins as a way to continue running their factories, to continue working with oil, real estate, and so on and so forth. So I think when you look at financial use cases, financial tools, savings is a major one. Are there any additional ones, Dr. Markus, that you might have before we move to the stablecoin use case?
So I want to kind of add to what you said, but actually you can save and keep the money in USD, but you can also use solutions such as off-ramping solutions such as the one Kotani Pay provides to move it to Kenya shilling or to Naira, whatever domestic currency, as and when you need. I think that is something really exciting that's happening on the continent. You have a lot of on and off-ramp providers that you can move money really seamlessly, easily, with like very low cost. So shout out Kotani Pay and phone bank. Chris is right there. But like, it's interesting. You can keep in dollar and off-ramp. But Markus, I'll let you kind of like...
Yeah, thank you. And I think you brought up many, many good points. So first of all, +1 on all of these use cases: remittances, saving, lending, payments, all of them are amazing use cases for this technology, for Web3. Then the next point on these use cases, the projects that you can see here on stage, Kotani Pay, the Celo technology, the Opera Mini Pay wallet, the Mento stablecoins, they are all optimized for the use on mobile phones. So in the end, as an addition to these use cases, we now have actually all these use cases accessible on a mobile phone. And this can be a super fast high-end phone or a low-end phone, because in the end, this is what makes this technology so amazing. It is optimized for fast and secure use on a mobile phone. And then you mentioned remittances, and for me as well, remittances is an amazing opportunity. With open source permissionless technology, you now actually have the opportunity to not only access this in one single country, but in a permissionless way access this in every country. And therefore, this is really great for cross-border use cases, because everyone can, in every country, build on this technology. Everyone can access it because it's permissionless, it's cross-border, and therefore I think it's a great technology for remittances. And then you also mentioned giving people access, for example, to a dollar stablecoin. This is, I think, great, especially when you're in a country that undergoes like high inflation. You, with this technology, with the Opera Mini Pay wallet on Celo, you can get access to Celo dollars, a dollar stablecoin, which is highly secure, over-collateralized, very transparent. And you can use this stablecoin, for example, to save and basically go around this high inflation. But we also talked about lending and the credit use case. And I think here local currencies also come in. With Mento, what we want to build is a platform for many different currencies. If you, for example, want to get a loan, maybe you want to get that loan in local currency because you want to build a small business or a big business and your revenues are in local currency. If the loan would be in a foreign currency and your currency is losing value, then the loan would become really expensive. And therefore, I believe on a platform, we need to give people access to both local currencies and to, for example, access to a dollar in an easy and permissionless way.
Awesome. Yeah. So one of the, I think, biggest areas within the crypto Web3 space. So we talk about protocols all the time, whether it's layer 1, layer 2 protocols like Ethereum. We talk about stable coins. We talk about Bitcoin as its own ecosystem, digital gold kind of ecosystem. Stable coins especially have seen tremendous growth, one will say. I think it was, like I said, August last year when we surpassed most of the financial giants in terms of payments volumes on chain. This is a question to Dr. Markus. What makes them stable? So are they really stable? If I'm a business in this room or I'm an individual in this room and I'm thinking, what framework should I use to think through stable coins? How would I go about that?
It's a good question and also a complex question because there's many different aspects to what makes a stablecoin stable. And there are also then in the end, as to every asset that is out there, there are different risks. So there is no 100% safe asset. Stable coins are great because they are more stable than other assets out there. There are different stable coins that exist. There's USDC, there's USDT, there's Celo dollar, there's Celo euro, there's Celo real. So different stable coins not only track different currencies, but also different stable coins have different stability mechanism. Some stable coins are actually backed by credit, so by money in a bank in some way. So major risks could be then the credit risk or the counterparty risk of that bank. And of course, also the demand for that stablecoin, how much that varies. Then there are stablecoins that are backed by different things that maybe could live on chain. So for example, the Celo dollar is backed by other stablecoins, but also other crypto assets. It's highly over collateralized because these crypto assets and also stablecoins have risks. And therefore we use more collateral than outstanding stablecoins. And we do everything on chain so that people can actually see what the collateral is if they want to look a level deeper behind the stablecoin. I think one big thing, as with every asset out there, is supply and demand of the asset. How flexible is the supply of the stablecoin and how volatile is the demand for it. And I think this was also especially something that we see here in the beginning when stablecoins really boomed. Sometimes in some regions or in some countries, it's really hard to access the stablecoins. So there's a big question how liquid it is, how easy it is to access it. And this is something we now really focus on to make it more accessible to everyone so that people actually have this good liquidity and don't go through a big spread on stablecoins.
Makes sense. So if I'm thinking through a stablecoin, I want to check what assets back the stablecoin. I want to see what the stability mechanism is. And I also want to check the liquidity of the stablecoin. Okay. Tosin, Opera has been very successful in onboarding users on the continent to its browser. I think you guys have millions, I can't remember the number, but millions of users on the continent who use Opera Mini on their phones. And you've taken this very bold step as a corporate to launch a crypto wallet within Opera Mini that helps users access stablecoins, but also swap stablecoins to local currencies. What are some of the user-centric approaches you have taken in designing this particular experience? And what should anyone here thinking about onboarding millions of Africans focus on?
Well, first off, I think and this is the same for every product that Opera has, is the approach to the building, right? Every product starts with the user, whether it's GX, it's Opera Mini browser, Opera for Android, Opera for iOS. There's a focus on the people who are actually using the product, and starting with what are their day-to-day issues, what are the things that they do with the product, and how can we make that entire experience better. So I think the legacy of Opera Mini as a browser is actually one of, and I like to say this because I heard one of the engineers who's actually working on the Opera Mini say this, and he described it as more than building a browser, right? Opera Mini has been around for over 18 years now, connecting millions of Africans to the internet, irrespective of the kind of device that they're using, right? And what this means is Opera Mini has been around since we had feature phones, and even right now, where people are still using feature phones, Opera Mini works on those kinds of phones, right? It's very lightweight, and so it allows people who might have issues with some other browsers still stay connected to the internet. And there's a necessity to be connected to the internet. Everything happens on the internet these days. The internet is where people get jobs. The internet is where people get opportunities. The internet is where people learn. And so it's more than just a browser. The internet is actually connecting people to opportunities. And that's what, that's the legacy of what Opera Mini is. And it kind of also plays into what we're trying to do with MiniPay. Building a MiniPay has started from the very beginning with the user, asking people and looking at, first off, it's focused on the continent. What are the issues that people on the continent face? Whether it concerns crypto wallets or whether it concerns, just mobile wallets in general, what are those issues they face? Whether it's fees, whether it's how complicated the app is to use, whether it's the language. And so we've made MiniPay this very simple product and kind of stripped away all the complicated lingo, all the complexities that usually would accompany Web3 products, unfortunately. And I remember when I first got into, when I first started learning about Web3, it was a lot, right? Trying to understand what this really meant. And it almost felt like everybody who was writing or building for Web3 kind of expected everyone to just automatically understand, automatically have this technical knowledge to use these products, which is not true. If we're going to onboard, the next million users or the next billion users, then it needs to be the notion or the understanding that we're onboarding people who know less about this technology, and quite honestly, who care less about the technology, right? The focus is on what the technology helps them do. So we don't need to, present this as this complex thing or this, yes, it's an amazing technology, but nobody needs to know that, right? What does it help people do on a day-to-day? And so, okay, MiniPay helps you send cash to a friend, send cash to someone, send cash to, from Nigeria to Ghana. That's what it helps you do. And that's what a lot of people care about. Why is this, I have other ways to send cash. Why is this important? It helps you send cash for less. As Isha said, sending on Celo is for sub-send fees. So irrespective of how much I'm sending, I can send money from Lagos to Accra, and it will cost me less than ₦1 to send that. That's the things that people are concerned about. Those are the sort of nuances that we've taken into consideration in not just building out the product, but also how we market the product. It's very simple. The language is simple. The product is simple. We've made sure, and I had a product like saying this, we've made sure we've built a Web3 product that's for humans and not for robots or computers.
Okay, so from where you stand as as a corporate and as someone who has served millions of users on the continent, people don't care so much about the decentralization aspects of the technology, and I think that's what crypto bros like to everyone should know: public key, private key, smart contract, blah blah blah. But you want to stick to a very simple way of introducing it to the user. You want to think about the nuances of the user. Is the user using a smartphone, non-smartphone? What particular thing does the user want to achieve with these products? So that means you spend a lot of time piloting. And I know Isha has spent quite a number of years in Africa piloting various use cases on Web3, DeFi use cases. Very briefly, I think we're almost at time. What are the 2 DeFi use cases that you did in Africa that excited you, and as part of the Celo Foundation?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think there's so much potential, and we've talked about this a little bit, but I think something that I'm really excited about, and we've spoken about this a little bit, but just letting users save in a dollar-denominated currency and having access to yield that is traditionally not available. You kind of mentioned earlier, even for businesses to get a dollar account on the continent is extremely difficult. And so I used to work in a bank in Kenya, to be honest. I remember not approving, or like the bank not approving dollar denominated accounts. So, and we're talking at the business level, at the enterprise level. So retail is completely out of the scope, right? And so giving people access to dollar denominated, not only currency, but also yield. I want to kind of give out a shout out to Rachel in the audience, who has HaloFi, which is a protocol that's actually on Opera Mini Pay. And what it does is it takes traditional saving circles and saving what people know already, like Tosin said, meet people where they're at today. And so what we're doing with HaloFi and a lot of other applications in the Celo ecosystem is like, hey, you understand saving circles, things like SACOs and things and Chemas, and like, let's meet them where they're at. If you understand this is your user behavior, let's incorporate that in Web3. So I think that has been super successful. I know a couple of other people in the audience are working on some of this already. And so I'm hoping to see a lot more of these use cases come up on the continent. We've piloted a few, they've been super successful. So this is one of the use cases that I'm super excited about. Like, you get to save in money in dollar and access yield in dollar. And then the other, I know Markus kind of talked about, is lending. And I think, again, you need capital for economic development. And so lending is a really big use case for me when I think of like micro, small entrepreneurs that don't need too much capital, right? Providing them access to just a little bit of short-term liquidity goes a long way in, like, honestly, economic growth for the region. It's not only a family that's affected, it's the region that's affected. So that, and then I think another excellent use case here is learn to earn, or X to earn, I think is a fabulous use case. I think we are the youngest population across the world. Africa has the youngest population. I think it's also going to be one of the reasons that kind of promote growth for the continent, and to be able to then leverage this population for growth in multiple ways, where you're providing them access to earning opportunities in sometimes traditional ways and sometimes completely non-traditional ways that are new and unique to Web3, I think is another use case that I'm super excited about.
Makes sense.
Just to double down on what Isha said, I think a use case that I'm personally really excited about as well is lending and borrowing, right? For a lot of countries on the continent, credit is non-existent. I'm a Nigerian, and that means that everything that I want to buy, I have to pay out of pocket for, which is not realistic. I want to buy a car, I want to buy a house, I have to pay out of pocket in cash, in full. That is no way, to live, right? The quality of people's lives is dependent on things like this, transportation, being mobile, or having a roof over your head. And so when there's an absence of these kinds of opportunities, it does reflect on the quality of life that people live. And so I'm glad that this use case exists, and easily too accessible in Web3, right? Allowing people access to credit, whether it's small credit or large credit. And doing this at the fraction of the cost of what.
Awesome. Yeah. So I think we have 3 minutes to time. If there are any questions in the crowd, just put your hand up, and someone will come to you. So basically, what we are saying is the question right there. What we are saying is the adoption of Web3 in Africa has mostly been user-driven. From what we have seen, both in terms of the number, this is in terms of the stablecoin volumes and so on, this is a market that's growing at 1,200% every year. And there are quite a number of things we face on the continent, including access to credit, to Tosin's point, access to jobs, right? So digital jobs or earning over the internet has become easier thanks to some of these inventions. Access to DeFi use cases, savings, yield, and so on. So it's an area that I think will take up a larger and larger chunk of fintech on the continent. And as you can see also with the sponsors, it's taking a larger and larger chunk of fintech on the continent. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, I'm James from Web3 Africa. And it's a question across the board because Africa has one of the highest rates of digital assets adoption as per the 2022 report on chain analysis, yet we still have not yet reached our potential. We still have several setbacks. So I wanted to know, from your perspective, what type of solutions do you have that we think can be able to increase our rate and to be able to achieve, as Africa, to dominate the digital asset world?
Okay.
So I think one answer to that question is actually looking at the users on the continent and how are they actually accessing Web3? How are they interacting with these dApps? And the answer to that question is that it's mobile first, which is something that Celo is championing, right? By being mobile first, there's an effort to, make this available to more people, because the reality is that the number of people who have access to mobile phones versus the number of people who have access to actual computers on the continent, one is more than the other. And so if you want to be accessible to more Africans on the continent, there's a need to actually be available on mobile, to be available on the devices that more people have, that the larger portion of the continent has. And I think that's one point. And then second point is, so where I said kind of looking at the kind of users that you're offering this service to, it's more than just the understanding or the level of technical savvy that the users have, but it's also about looking at their personal circumstances. It's things as simple as what are the fees attached to the product that you're offering? Are the fees actually affordable to the users that you're trying to reach, right? Then also I mentioned the language. Also, I've seen that when it comes to marketing a product, marketing a service, marketing a feature, it's easy to lose context when it's a one-size-fits-all approach, right? My problems or my day-to-day, not even just problems, what I experience on a day-to-day is different from what Markus might be experiencing on a day-to-day. And so there's certain nuances that need to be taken into consideration in the way that you would sell me a product, or you would try to convince me to use a product, than how you would try to convince Markus or Isha to use the same product, even though they do the same things. That product might fit into my life a little differently than it would fit into Isha's or Markus's.
I quickly want to give one example on Tosin's first point on the mobile first part, what this actually means. If you download Opera MiniPay today, you can link your phone book to your wallet, and basically, if you want to send a transaction, you can just in the wallet see who's using also MiniPay, and you can directly send a transaction to their phone number. So this link to the phone number as an identifier on the blockchain is a really, really cool example why this makes this technology much easier to use now and on a mobile phone.
Yeah, and maybe the additional piece there would be that regulation also needs to come to a point where it matures, so that we stop working in a gray area where we have millions of users using the products, but we don't have any form of regulation. The good thing is there's been a lot of development on that side. I think South Africa is releasing the first set of virtual asset service provider licenses. Kenya is following the same line, and if you're interested in that kind of thing, tomorrow there's a workshop on developments within the Web3 regulatory space. And I'd like to thank our speakers, Tosin, Markus, Isha, for making us more intelligent, brighter, and I hope we'll be, all of us will onboard into the Web3 space. Thank you.
And thank you, Felix. Great job.
Yeah.